Welcome back. Security is a very, very important thing on the web. And as developers, we have a responsibility to make sure that whatever user information we get, we handle it with care in a secure fashion. And up until now, I've shown you how to do a simple sign-in setup. But I haven't really shown you a secure way of doing that. And in this video, I'm going to talk about bcrypt Node.js. And bcrypt is a library that is very, very powerful. It allows us to create a very secure login. Now, what does that mean? Let me show you. Up until now, we had password just in plain text. In real life, we are never ever storing passwords as plain text like this, just like a string, into our database. This is exactly how companies get hacked and passwords get released of users when they store it like this. We want to store passwords in something called hashes. And I'll get to what that is in a second. But I want to change the database around to show you a more realistic look of how things will be stored. You see, in our database, we can have something perhaps like login. And this login will contain an array of objects that has an ID. Let's just say 987 with the hash, which will be empty for now, and then a email. And this email will just reference john@gmail.com. This is something that we'll get more into as we talk about databases. But I want to show you, I want to demonstrate this point to you. In order for us to handle the sensitive information, that is, if John, let's say, enters our site and wants to do a sign-in, he's going to give us his email plus his password, which is cookies. Now, he is trusting us with this information. And the very first thing we want to do is, well, we're definitely not going to add it as a query string in a GET request. We're going to add it to a POST request, so it's in the body of the request. We also wanted to send it over HTTPS. That is something that requires a certificate, and we're not going to get into that. But we definitely want to include it through an HTTPS request so that it's encrypted. When he sends cookies, it's going to get jumbled up, and nobody in the middle can see this. Or they'll be able to see it, but they won't understand what it means. And only the server, once it receives this password, can actually understand that this stands for cookies. All right, so one is HTTPS. The second thing is, how do we store that password? Well, we store it in a hash. And bcrypt, the package that I was just talking about, allows us to do this. Let me just download this package and show you how it works. There you go. Now with bcrypt installed, you can see over here that it has a few things we can use. I'm going to copy and paste this and move some of this stuff around. I'm actually going to put this at the bottom. Bcrypt gives us a way to hash a password and a way to compare passwords or hashes. But what does that mean? Let's go one by one. If I grab this function and in our sign-in, or sorry, I guess in our register, because that's when we give our password. In our register, when we run bcrypt.hash And instead of bacon, this is what we pass as the user's password. If we pass the password here, well, we have a couple of parameters that they give us, and these are options that we can enter. For now, we'll just leave it the way it is. If I console.log the hash that we receive in this function, so bcrypt's going to hash the password and then return this hash, we're going to just say hash. All right, so let's just see what happens here. I'm going to save. I'm going to run npm start. Going back to our postman, if I do register with Anne, I'm going to click send. And again, bcrypt is not defined because I haven't included it here. Let's do that. Let's do const bcrypt equals require bcrypt node.js. Let's save that and try that again. I'm going to click send. If we go back to the console, do you see that? We just got a hash. And that is what a hash function does. A hash function takes a string and jumbles it up in a way that there's no way I'm going to be able to figure out that this stands for the password cookies. And hash functions are one way. That is, you can enter cookies and you'll get this, but you'll never be able to go back. And the other quality of hash functions is that if I now do this again with password, I guess the password for Anne was apples. If I click send, I go back, I see that the hash, the first time and the second time, are different. And although hash functions actually always return the same thing for the same value, bcrypt is a little bit more secure than that and adds a bit of other magic to make sure that it's impossible to ever figure out what the password is. But now we can store this hash, this jumbled up value, in our database in here for the login. And anytime we do sign in and we want to check if the user's password match, well, now let me remove this. We have, let's go to sign in, and at the top, we can compare the hashes. So grabbing the hash that we had before, let's use this one, or let's use the latest one that we got. I will replace this. It's going to look pretty ugly, but I'm going to replace this hash with this long string, and I'm going to compare apples because that's what Anne's password is. If I compare apples to this hash, let's console.log first guess. We'll have the response again. That is what we receive after bcrypt does this. And the second time around, we'll also do a console log with the wrong password, which is veggies. And this will be the second guess. Let's go to do a sign in. It doesn't really matter what it is because we're not really worried about a response. And I get an error saying hash is not defined because I haven't updated this hash to what we just copied before. So let me do that. There you go. Let me go back, click send. If I look back here, I get first guess is true. That is, apples equals this hash that they gave us, but veggies does not equal the hash that they gave us there. Let me close that a little bit. And bcrypt is really, really powerful. We're going to use this when we actually implement a database to our registration. Using bcrypt, which is a tried and tested hashing package, we can safely store users' information, users' passwords, into our database. And nobody, even if hackers access our database, they'll have a very hard time getting the user passwords. They may be able to get their email addresses, but never our passwords. And we'll implement that in our database using bcrypt. But I really want to emphasize this point because security is really important. Always send any sensitive information from the front end to the back end using HTTPS in a post body. And if you get something like a password, the way you store it into the database is using something like bcrypt to generate a hash. And every time a user signs in, check that hash with whatever the user inputted. In the next part, I've left for you a security article that I wrote that may be a little bit advanced, but I think covers the best way for you to store user passwords. Something that is overlooked quite often, but again, very, very important if you want to be that top developer. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.